As educators, we hold a very important role for our students' future. But when there is a problem with behavior in the classroom, we often point fingers at the students and build in consequences without ever taking a second to meaningfully look at your role as the adult in that situation. My guest today believes that student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change, and he shares the importance of transformation of adult mindset to encourage our students. We are the variable in every situation, so you get to be the change you want to see in your students. The way forward most often happens when we look at ourselves in the mirror. And look, that's not always easy, but it's truly the most important work that we do in school or anywhere. Here is where you get back to your agency and feel empowered. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. And this work only works within community, so if you are listening, it is time that you join the Facebook group Empowered Educator Faculty Room. Because if you enjoyed this podcast, you will love the Facebook group where you'll get live workshops with me, giveaways, insights, and where we can celebrate you throughout your empowered journey. You belong here in the Empowered Educator Faculty Room on Facebook. Remember all the passion and vision you had when you first went into teaching? Feeling like building young minds and creating community through your work would make a lasting impact on this world? Well, those days may feel like they're behind you now because you're exhausted, stressed, and overwhelmed and frustrated, but I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be like this. In fact, the love of teaching never really went away, but it absolutely needs transformation. Welcome to the Take Notes podcast. I'm Jen Rafferty, former music teacher, mom of two, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, and I'm here to light the way for you. In order to create a generational change for our kids, we need to shift the paradigm away from the perpetual stress and overwhelm and into a life of joy and fulfillment. This is Education 2.0, where you become the priority, shift how you live your life, and how you show up both at work and at home. So take a sip of steamy morning coffee and grab your notebook. It's time to take notes. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another wonderful episode of Take Notes. I am here today with an incredible guest, AJ Crabill, who serves as the conservator at DeSoto Independent School District in Texas, where during his guidance, DeSoto improved from F ratings in academics, finance, and governance to B ratings. And he also serves as governance director at Council of the Great City Schools. He has also served as deputy commissioner at Texas's education agency and board chair of Kansas City Public Schools. AJ believes that student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. And changing adult behaviors requires new mindsets, new knowledge, and/or new skills. And his intention is to transform student outcomes through the transformation of adult mindsets, knowledge, and skills, starting with his own. So clearly you can see why I wanted him as a guest on this show. Thank you, AJ, so much for being here today with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jen.
I'm excited to just get this conversation going. So can we just dive in a little bit about why have you come to this realization and discovery that children's outcomes don't change until adult outcomes change?
This is actually kind of intuitive for a lot of us. And so many of us have had that situation where we had a student whose behavior in this group of class was one way, and then their behavior in this group of classes was a very different way. You know what I'm talking about? Have you had that?
I know exactly what you're talking about. When we all get in the meetings and we're like, wait, he doesn't act like that way for you? You know, what's happening here? Mm-hmm.
And I certainly reflect on my own journey, and I can think of years where I performed at a level that even I didn't know I could perform at in these teachers' classes, and was just a unholy terror in these classes. And at the time, I certainly didn't have the perspicacity to and be reflective on what's going on here. But with the benefit of hindsight, like, it's clear to me that the adult behaviors that I experienced in these two sets of classrooms was fundamentally different. That in one classroom, there is this mindset, little AJ doesn't want to learn. And so we're just gonna figure out how to get through. We're gonna have to survive this drama, and maybe even we'll just get rid of them. And this other classroom, the mindset is, AJ wants something for himself, and we want something for him, and he's got the goods to make good on that. What am I going to do as a teacher to help be the bridge between where little AJ is and where he wants to be. And in that mindset, I was blessed and I thrived. I think my story is probably everybody's story. We've had this experience, these two ways that people showed up in our lives, and that as young people, often we were responsive to that. I take that as incredibly encouraging news, because if there's any validity to this idea that student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change, the blessing in that is that we don't have to wait for the right children to come along. We don't have to wait for the right teachers. We don't have to wait for the right parents. We don't have to wait for the right school budgets, for the right legislative environment. That what's possible for the children in our orbit can emerge immediately from my willingness to change my adult behavior.
Oh, 100%. And that's, I think, the best part of recognizing that you're the problem, because you're also the solution then, right? Yeah.
I'm totally the solution. Absolutely.
Yeah, that is good news. That's the best news, because we don't have to wait. We can actually start right now.
I have a sense of agency.
Oh, 100%. Yes, because if we're always going to be waiting for, like you said, the right group of kids or the right legislator or the right administrators or the right school board, we are just going to be waiting and counting down the years.
We're going to be waiting for a minute, Jen. We're going to be waiting.
Yeah, we're counting down years to retirement because you can't wait to get out of there because it just never happened for you. And that's the reality for a lot of people.
And that is not the day-to-day grind that I want for any of our teachers. I don't want folks showing up at work just kind of treading water, getting through, waiting for the world to change. I want people to be able to live their passion, why they came to the classroom to begin with. Like, what are we doing here? I'm not here to be angry and frustrated and broken. We're here to live into our own greatness, and through us to cause greatness in the lives of the children that we interact with. That's why we all showed up. That's what we're doing here. That's what we want. And I see this, at least for me, as an inspiration that challenges me to stand in the place, not necessarily in the stand of truth. Like I'm not putting this out here. This is a truth for the ages, because on a whole nother angle, someone might argue, well, are you saying that young people can't be the architect of their own learning? Absolutely. I'm not saying that. And so the point of this isn't to, de-agency our students and say, well, they can't create their own educational improvement, but is to rather create a sense of agency for me. Like, in whatever role that I'm in, what is it that I can be doing? How can I modify how I'm showing up and who I'm being in the moment in a way that can really be transformative for our students?
But I think that is truth there, AJ. I think that is capital T truth, because when you understand your own power and your agency and feel empowered in those moments, from moment to moment, there is an actual ripple effect that happens, because when you show up differently, everyone around you shows up differently.
And give permission to everybody.
Right. So while no, you are not 100% responsible for the children in your class and the choices that they're making, in being responsible for your own choices, that 100%, and that is truth, affects the outlying environment wherever you go.
The way I talk to it when I'm visiting with teachers, education leaders, the term I use is parallel process. This phenomenon that whatever the leaders are doing, that in that moment, we are silently and subconsciously often giving permission to those who subscribe to our leadership to do the same. And so if we have a PLC, if I'm leading the PLC and I show up exactly on time to the PLC every week, then I am silently permissioning others to do the same. If I roll into the PLC 5 minutes late every week and I'm the one leading the PLC, I am silently giving permission to everyone else to do the same. This idea of parallelism, this parallel process that what the leader's doing, I'm permissioning others to do. I absolutely believe that that's powerful, just as much so in the boardroom as it is in the principal's office as it is in the classroom, that how I show up is more likely to be echoed than just the demands I make of others. Well, you all should treat each other respectfully. Damn it. Well, how I'm showing up is more likely to permission the behavior than the things that I'm giving as an instruction.
Yeah, and I'm laughing because what you're joking about, it's true. It's just there are people, and it doesn't matter in which role you are in the school, right? There is this drip effect that happens. And so when you are wondering, why aren't people showing up on time? And you're the one who's also doing the thing.
The fruit roll is 10 minutes late.
Right. But that goes for everything. That goes for kindness. That goes for respect. That goes for communication. That goes for expectations and agreements that we have with each other to create culture in a school district. That as a leader, you have a responsibility to do this internal work and really figure out, what is my role here? Because you are the helm of the energetics, and how everything kind of aligns and is attuned to creating some sort of progress, whether it's the progress that you want or not. That a lot of it depends on how you show up and do this internal work.
Absolutely. It reminds me, I was doing a classroom walkthrough once. I was visiting the building and wanted to do some walkthroughs because the building was really struggling. And as I went in one particular classroom and I saw some of the most appalling instruction I had seen in a while. It's like there's no sense of connection or engagement between the educator and the learners. I'm not clear on what the lesson is. I'm not clear that anybody else in the room is, any two people in the room are clear on what the lesson is. I mean, there's just so many things. There's yes, no questions rather than open-ended questions. I'm not hearing academic language. Students aren't being engaged. I saw some of what I found just horrible instruction. Like, these children are not receiving the blessing that they're here to receive. And so I left that classroom, finished doing the walkthroughs. Fast forward a year later, I'm at a different school, and I noticed that the same teacher whose horrible instruction I saw the year before is now at this school. It's like, whoa, what? Why is this person still here? And I immediately go into this, kind of confused, like, I can't believe it. This was horrible instruction, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, we need to go in here. Have you been in here? That you're the principal. Why haven't you? We go into there. And he's like, well, let's watch and see. So the principal guides me into the classroom, and she's standing right next to me, and we watch. And I sit in the back of the classroom for 15 minutes and watch some of the most amazing instruction I have ever seen. All the students were engaged. Everybody knew exactly what was going on. Folks were excited about the learning, fired up about the lesson. Teacher was busy, providing guidance, not the sage on the sage situation, but had students working in their different groups, and folks, were demonstrating autonomy. Like, it was just this really beautiful classroom setting. And we step out back in the hallway with the principal. I was like, what? This is not what I saw for this person last year. And the principal, she hit me with, yeah, it's because the principal last year didn't believe in her, but I do. And something about just how that principal showed up differently for that teacher made all the difference in how that teacher showed up for those students. And so this idea of parallelism, that as a leader, whether a peer leader or a formal leader, or that informal leader in the building who everybody looks up to, but even though they don't have the official title, that I have real power in how I show up for people, and the work that I've done in my own mind, that who I'm being in the moment really creates a safe space for them to be the best version of themselves as well.
I'm so glad you shared that story too, because I also imagine in that year where that teacher was struggling, there were moments where they must have questioned what they were doing.
Should I even teach?
Because they felt it. And I think that's where a lot of teachers are right now, because everyone's so activated. I mean, we're still just coming off the pandemic. We're not out of the woods yet. And I think that there's this big questioning process of, what am I even doing here? And I think everyone's activated.
And then to make matters worse, you have some knucklehead, muckety muck come to a walkthrough and see you on probably your legitimate worst day of the year. And I certainly was not breathing possibility into that teacher in the moment. And so, yeah, I absolutely get that in that moment, in part due to my behavior and how I showed up in the walkthrough at year one versus year two. Like, in that moment, we run the risk of losing an absolutely amazing educator, because the leadership behavior isn't see how it can modify itself to be of service to that particular educator, and to, through her, then open up what's possible for a classroom of students. Children suffered in that day, and the difference maker was adults, in this case, district leaders and building leaders, changing our behavior to really open up possibility for the teachers we serve.
Absolutely. And I think that is what's happening now, is that we're losing a lot of our best and brightest because of just that. And, we talk often about, we have these beautiful analogies of the flower isn't growing. We don't blame the flower. We change the environment, right? And we have all of these like stories around this. But the thing is, like, we are the environment, the people
Right.
who are in these places for these other people. We are the environment.
We are bringing no sunshine whatsoever, and then mad that people out here wilting.
Right. And we wonder why. Like, what's happening right now? Why isn't my garden growing? Well, because you're not nourishing it. In fact, you're giving it more of what it really doesn't need. And so looking at ourselves in this way as being part of this environment, I think is a really important perspective to take.
Yeah. I'm out here sprinkling pesticide on the garden trying to figure out why it ain't growing. I'll understand what the problem is.
Yes. And the thing is too, AJ, I'm sure you've discovered this in your own journey, is that looking in a mirror doesn't always feel good. It's painful sometimes.
Always best to blame the others first.
It seems like, but how's that working for us? But it is painful to look in the mirror because you have to really dig deep. And I think circling back to what you were saying before about what your own beliefs are about what's possible, about how you think about your self-efficacy and your ability to show up the way you want to, all of that impacts how you are going to be interacting with the kids in your classroom and your colleagues. And really taking a look at that mirror is asking yourself some really hard questions, which is painful. But when we all do it together, there's this beautiful community. And then sticking with this garden metaphor, our garden grows. So I have a question now. I want to shift a little bit is, you have an incredible amount of experience with school boards. And I really do want to talk about this and highlight this a little bit because I think sometimes when you think about these school boards, it is a little bit like this group of people on this mountain who make the decisions, and we need to ask permission to talk to the people.
Bring the tablets back down, chisel the stone.
Yes, and we only go there when there's a big emergency and everything's on fire. So can you talk to us a little bit about really what the role of a school board is and how we can work with a school board to reach this common vision that we all have?
Yeah, so the work of the school board is quite unique and separate from everybody else in the school system. So the board's job is to represent the vision and values of the community, to really listen. So what happens, you have a community, but there's just too many of us in the community to all sit around a table and make decisions about things that the school should be doing. And so at some point, somebody said, instead of having the 100,000 of us sit around a table and make decisions, why don't we get some people who represent our vision for what should happen, what students should know and be able to do, our values, our non-negotiables. Let's hire some folks who are going to represent us and our vision and values and have them do this on our behalf. We refer to that group that the community hires to represent its vision and its values on its behalf. It refers to that group as the school board. So that is the job of the school board, is to represent the vision and values of the community, the vision that describes what we want our students to know and be able to do, and the values describe what are the non-negotiables that have to be honored on the journey. Then the job of the superintendent and everyone else of the organization is to implement the vision and values of the community. It's actually not teachers' job, principal's job, superintendent's job to decide what the community wants for its children. It's not those folks' job. The job is to hear what that vision is as distilled from and communicated by the board, and then to figure out how are we going to make that happen in reality. This is a hard distinction to maintain because you simultaneously have teachers, principals, superintendents who probably live in the community as well, who have their own ideas about what the vision and value should be. And you simultaneously have school board members whose sole job is to represent the vision and values, but not to implement it, constantly trying to figure out how can we get more and more involved in the day-to-day implementation. And so this can be a tough separation to maintain. The value of maintaining it, though, is because then you segregate expertise. The expertise of individual school board members is listening to the community, understanding the community's vision and values, and writing it down. And by the way, the written form of the community's vision and values, that's what we mean by policy. Policy is nothing more than the codification of the community's vision and values. That is the sole expertise. So even if you have a board member who has been a teacher, they're not on the board to bring the expertise of a teacher, certainly the perspective of a teacher, but they're on the board to represent the vision and values of the community. And when we hire staff, we're not hiring staff who need to have expertise in going out, listening to the community vision and writing them into policy. We're hiring staff who have expertise in taking a set of vision about what we want our students to know and be able to do and operationalize that on a daily basis. That is the work of our staff. And so we need both, but they certainly do different jobs. It's like you hear the old adage, it takes a village to raise a child. This is certainly the case. What is often missed is not all the villagers have the same job. Some villagers have the job of actually working day in and day out with the students. Some villagers have the job of just listening for and synthesizing the entire village's vision and values, and then passing that on to the teacher and saying, here's what has to get done. You go figure out how it gets done.
So can we pause here for a second? Because I want to just say what's on my mind. All of that sounds so beautiful and practical and valuable. And for me, as a community member in the school district that I worked in too, I think what I have observed in that experience and other areas that I've been at is there is a breakdown in the communication of what those values are and how they're being implemented. Is that like the biggest breakdown that you've experienced?
That is essentially the crux of the book I just wrote.
Great. I'm so glad. Yes, because we need things like that. Because, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm hired as a new baby teacher and I've got bright-eyed and I'm bushy-tailed and I'm like ready to go to teach my content and change the world with my students. And here I go. And I have no idea what the role of the school board is until all of a sudden, I was a music teacher. There's a problem. They want to cut my program. I might not have a job next year. And that is my first relationship with the school board. That's crazy to me.
And what's odd about that is, generally speaking, when the school board is really doing its job well, you're probably never going to hear about them at all, even when your program is shifting. Like, ideally, those type of decisions aren't decisions that the board's making or involved in at all. That's the implementation layer. And so where I often see things go really sideways, some of the failure modes that school boards entertain winds up being when boards are actually showing up at schools and trying to engage themselves in decision making. Well, we should keep this program. We should cut that one. I don't think she's a very good teacher. I've heard that people don't like her. And so we should do something about that. Well, he's a really good guy. He goes to my church, so we should keep him. When boards get involved at that level, then you do hear about them. And for good reason, because they're creating real harm within the organization. But generally speaking, if board members are really, really doing their job well, most of the time, they should be really impossible to run into because they're very much behind the scenes.
So tell me more about the crux of your book, about this communication breakdown, and then how do we navigate it in a way so we can make it work? Because we are talking about the adults here, again, because in order to serve kids, we need to talk about the adults.
So in the book, essentially, if we want to see improvements in student outcomes in the classroom, that's going to happen largely by this teacher just getting stronger and stronger in her craft, day in, day out, just continuous improvement. And it's a really simple formula. Be clear about what exactly it is we're trying to accomplish in the classroom today, actually deploy it, do some measurement to figure out what works, reteach where necessary, wash, rinse, repeat. It's just this really tight, continuous improvement cycle. And as long as we've got the appropriate short cycle assessment and we've got some coaching, preferably of a non-evaluative sort, then we can just make it a really tight, we're just week in and week out, I'm just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And then next year, when I come to this exact same content, I'm going to be on fire because we've really honed and honed and honed. That continuous improvement cycle is almost the exact same thing that boards need in the boardroom. And the step one is we got to get clear about why we're here. And I refer to that as a focused mindset. And this is where the train often leaves the tracks very early on in the process, is that it can be very easy for board members to get off into believing that their job is to be the ombudsman and appease the needs of those who are privileged enough to be connected to the board members. It's actually not the job of the board, but it can feel that way, but it's not. And so the first step is a focused mindset. Why does the school system exist? And what I offer is the school system exists for one reason and one reason only. That's to improve student outcomes. It's to cause improvements in what students know and are able to do, to cause improvements in what students know and improvements in what they are able to do. Because when children walk out of the schoolhouse for the last time, The only thing they're taking with them is what they know and they're able to do. We're not giving them, they don't get to take a teacher with them when they leave. We're probably not giving them a stack of textbooks when they leave. We're probably not giving them a laptop when they leave. When they leave with what they know and they're able to do. The job of schools is to cause an increase in what students know and are able to do. That's step one in the continuous improvement process for school boards, is to get a focused mindset, to be very clear that that is the work, and that our access in the boardroom to causing that is through changing our adult behavior. Focused mindset is step one. Step two is getting clear about the priorities. And this too is where many boards completely fail, and that they can't tell you what the priorities are. I frequently walk into a board meeting where I've been invited in to provide some coaching for the board. And say, okay, what are your priorities? Are you all clear about your priorities? Yes, absolutely. All right, well, pop quiz. Everybody, there's a pad of paper in front of you. There's a pen. Everybody write down the priorities for this board. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, no problem. We'll write that down. You can guess where this thing's going.
Mm-hmm.
All right, folks, read them off. I have a $100 bill for any two people who wrote the exact same thing.
Have you ever given away that $100 bill? I need to know.
All my money's in my pocket. But the challenge is that the board's not clear about the priorities. Just in and among itself, there's definitely no way that there's going to be clarity between the board and the rest of the school system. Part of the reason this is particularly dangerous is because then if the board says, oh, well, we need to shift and go this direction, and then they look at where the school says, well, how come what you're doing is in alignment with what we're doing? Well, you need to hurry up and get in alignment because we're going this way now. And in that context, you see school systems do really wild things to try to be responsive to this kind of herky-jerky non-clarity of priorities. And often this is where programs, get cut, programs change. This is where the flavor of the month concept comes from. Oh, well, this week we're going this direction. This week we're going that direction. All of this emanates from a failure to get clear about what the priorities are. That's step two. After that, it's just the same implementation stuff that teachers got to do. After we get clear about the priorities, then it's monitor progress, align resources, and communicate the results, and then wash, rinse, and repeat over and over again. And so, like I said, the fundamental continuous improvement cycle is pretty similar between the boardroom and the classroom. They look a little bit different. But the key thing is if the board's not doing it, it has powerful ripple effects throughout the entire organization.
Sure. And the way you just kind of laid this out in this framework, it seems so simple. It's not easy.
Not easy, but very simple.
It's very simple. And one of the things I think that complicates it a little bit is this perceived power dynamic between superintendents and the school board. And I'm sure this comes up a bit for you. Can you talk a little bit about those power dynamics and how that can potentially complicate that process that you just laid out for us?
Well, a common misconception, you actually asked the question correctly. A common misconception, however, among board members is a misinterpretation of the question you just asked. And so my way of getting at this, I'll ask a board that I'm newly working with. It's a 7-member school board. A lot of school boards across the country have 5, 7, or 9 members, but mostly usually around 7. I'll ask them, how many bosses does the school board have? And people can count. Well, 7. And that's completely wrong. That is 100% wrong. The superintendent does not have 7 bosses. This is a complete misunderstanding of the role. The superintendent only has 1 supervisor, and that supervisor is the school board collectively as an entity. None of the 7 members of that board have any authority whatsoever over the superintendent or any person on staff. And in fact, in most states, the law is very explicit that individual board members have no authority. They can't tell the superintendent to tie their shoelaces. They have no authority whatsoever as an individual board member. Now, when acting in collection with their colleagues on the board, then absolutely the board collectively does have final authority over most things in the school system. But a common mistake that's made is folks think that, oh, well, I'm on the school board now, so vote for me. I'll show you how to fire this coach. Hey, you know what? This music teacher, she's not very good. Vote for me. I'll show you. You're going to cut her, but I'll get rid of her. And people speak like this as if they individually represent the vision and values of the community. This is arrogance of the highest order, that the board collectively represents the vision and values of the community. No individual board member can lay claim to that.
I'm so glad you said it that way. And it is confusing when it's not that way for the people in the ecosystem of the school district and the community.
It's incredibly confusing. And I would be lying if I said that I wasn't guilty of this myself when I first joined my school board. Like, even if you were trying to honor that, it takes a whole different way of thinking about things and a whole different way of showing up to honor it. So when I first got on my school board, one of the first things I did is I went out to one of our Montessori schools that I was really curious about. I want to learn more about. And so I went and I visited, did a walkthrough, thought it was a really interesting visit, hopped in my car, drove away. I'm not 10 minutes down the road, and the superintendent called me, "Why the hell did you go in here and start telling people everything was wrong with their school?" I'm like, whoa, what are you talking about? I didn't do any such thing. What had happened was, while I was in the building, I must have made some offhand comment about one of the display boards that wasn't complete or something yet. Whatever I did was triggering for folks because a board member who served before I joined the board had a habit of going into buildings and yelling, literally yelling at staff and telling them what was wrong with their display boards. And like, well, you need to get this right. And this is, and of all things, like, if we get the display boards right, then everybody's going to be literate. I mean, so of all things to focus on, but this is apparently what she would do. And so I made some offhanded comment. It was super triggering for them. It's like, oh my God, now we've got a new board member. Now we got to fix all of our display boards. And so apparently the principal just snaps. She's like, "I've had enough," and calls superintendents like, "I want to grieve," or "I'm angry about this person coming down and yelling at us." And then the superintendent then probably picked up the phone and, gave me an earful. There was that moment that I realized a couple critical things about the school board. One is it is really, really hard to be clear about what my intention is in the context of there are other board members currently serving and board members who have served before me. That it's not enough for me to be mindful of what I'm communicating. I also have to be mindful of what I'm communicating in the context of the folks who come before me. If folks have experienced trauma before I got here, I have to be mindful that whatever I'm doing is going to be experienced through the lens of that prior trauma, not through the lens of my intention.
And can we just pause here for a second, too, because that's true also for everything and everyone and every other interaction that everyone's doing all the time. So that's like big picture, capital T truth. That's another one. But yes, in this context right now in school boards, that is also particularly true. Yes.
Yeah. And I didn't know that. And I wasn't respectful of that. I wasn't mindful of it. And even though my intention was to be uplifting and loving and supportive of what was happening in this school, my impact was anything but. And I had to do the work to clean that up. I had to do the work to earn the trust and confidence of our educators. I was not owed it. I had to earn it. And basically on day one of the job, I was going in the exact opposite direction. That was the first takeaway from that. But my second takeaway is I had an opportunity to spend more time and reflect. Whatever I'm focused on is what other people are going to disproportionately be focused on as a board member and as a board. And so if we spend all of our board meetings talking about display boards, if we spend all of our board meetings talking about, the color of the AstroTurf on the football field, or what color should this hallway be, or all of these things about the facilities and buses, like, to the extent that that's what we spend all of our energy on, we are obligating our staff to spend energy on that. I spent energy talking about display boards. They didn't hear anything else I said in that whole school visit. All they heard was, "Great, now we got to fix all our display boards," among all the other things I've got to do for children today. Whatever I'm focused on, I draw the focus of the entire school system in that direction. And so this is a critical area of failure for school boards, is that you could be forgiven for having watched a school board for a full year and never had an idea that they were governing a school system, because they never talked about student outcomes. They never talked about what is it that we want students to know and be able to do, and what is current performance relative to that community expectation. And so this sense that I have to be incredibly focused and dialed into what is the thing that I want most, and it also means have the discipline to not focus on things that might actually be really worth focusing on, like that objectively in and of themselves are really important things and vital things. If somebody calls and says, "Hey, my kid didn't get picked up at school and they stood on a bus stop for 3 hours today, what are you going to do about that?" That's a really important thing. But to the extent that I make that the focus of the next school board meeting, which probably not the focus is when that kid did get to school, did they actually learn something? And so that's a really hard part about any leadership role, is that I've got to be disciplined enough that while there are all these important, all these urgent things that are popping up around me, I've got to constantly weigh the cost benefit of focusing on them rather than focusing on the things that I've already articulated as a priority.
And that's just it, getting really clear, like you said, on what your purpose is and what the priorities are, because that then becomes your North Star, and everything else, while it might seem important in the moment, can that be delegated to someone else? And does it align? Yes or no? And if it's no, then we don't talk about that at this meeting. And that's just how it is. And it is discipline, because it takes intention in your, not just your behaviors, but your thoughts about it, of which thoughts you're actually going to be attaching to align it then with the language you're using when you speak, not just to other board members, but to other members of the school community and the greater community. You have to be hyper vigilant about making sure that when you are speaking as that role, and it needs to be aligned.
And that's a tough transition, especially as I go from being an educator to a board member, go from being a parent to a board member. It takes a lot of intentionality to remove the educator hat, to remove the parent hat, and take on fully, here's the hat that I need, that my students need me to be wearing right now.
That's the question, isn't it? That's a great question. What's the hat that I need to be wearing for my students right now? Because then it takes you out of the equation. A lot of this, we're talking, it's not about you. We're talking a lot about personality and underlying. We haven't really talked about explicitity, but like ego, right? And like what's important and your own personal priorities. But at the end of the day, this isn't about you. This isn't about any of us. This is about the mission and the purpose of why we're here. And once you take yourself out of the equation, then things actually start to get a whole lot easier.
This is the discipline that comes with time and practice and trial and error. But it's a critical journey. But ultimately, it's what gives rise to my ongoing assertion. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change, starting with me.
Yes. And me. And you, for whoever's listening. So I have to ask, before we wrap up, what is your dream for the future of education?
The thing that I dream most about is actually about the future of our society. And when I say our society, I mean that species level society at the moment, but perhaps a multi-species society very soon with the advent of AI, seemingly at our doorstep.
Oh, that is another podcast episode. We can put a pin in that one.
I'll come back. I definitely have some thoughts on that one. But I dream about what's possible for our society. And my sense is that anything that is possible for us as a society, writ large, lives or dies inside of our ability to create really great educational opportunities for our children. That if we are not creating a space of aspiration and possibility and hopefulness and joy and learning and hard work and trial and error, if we're not creating that in a really powerful way in our schools, I question whether our society, one, will be long-lived at all, as our collective technology surpasses our collective wisdom. But even if somehow survival, what does that survival even look like in the absence of folks being able to live choice-filled lives where they can really pursue meaning for themselves on their own terms in a way that makes sense for them and their families? Like that's what I think about when I think about what's at stake. And that's what animates the work I do to be constantly looking at, what's the thing that we can do to improve outcomes for all of our children.
Yes, it is too important to mess it up. And that fire that I'm feeling in my belly as you're saying these words is the thing that gets me out of bed every morning, because this is too important to be complacent. It's too important. And it's going to feel messy and difficult.
Truly.
Right? Because change is messy and difficult, and it needs to happen in order for us to become something bigger and better than what we already are. Otherwise, what are we doing?
There's more that's possible for us as a society. I want to see us step into that possibility. And the thing that I can do to most support that is to help accelerate the transition from adult inputs focus to student outcomes focus.
Yes. And that is one of the reasons why I love having this platform and connecting with people like you who do the work in this world that you do, because we're stronger together. And I really believe this is how we change the world. We change ourselves, we change the world.
Amen.
Yes. Well, so before we go, I need to ask you, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about your work?
Feel free to reach out, ajcrabill.com, just AJCrabill.com. And feel free to just drop me an email, aj@ajcrabill.com. Especially if you're working on something and you're really seeing amazing results and you just want to visit with folks who can help identify how can we share that story? How can we spread it to more places? One of the benefits of the work I do is I get to spend a lot of time week in and week out with leaders who collectively are educating about 8 million of our students across the country. I have a real platform to bring to their attention things that are working. Now, there needs to be evidence. I don't want to hear what you enjoy or what you feel passionate about. I need those things as well, but I need data that says, and here's the evidence that we know this is making a difference for children. Like, as people have that, like, there's amazing things that are happening all around us. I would be honored to be a conduit to help spread that. And so to the extent that that's true, folks, please don't hesitate to drop me a line.
Fantastic. And I will put those links to your website and your email address in the show notes. AJ, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. It's been really great talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
And if you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single episode and share it with a friend. And we'll see you next time on Take Notes. Incredible, right? Together, we can revolutionize the face of education. It's all possible, and it's all here for you right now. Let's keep the conversation going at Empowered Educator Faculty Room on Facebook.